doing well and staying healthy. And a lot of the things going on, I think, have got us all scratching our heads. And today has been just a crazy day. And really, the past couple of days in following the news, things are just all over the map. And then I ran across an article just about an hour before we were going to air this update. And it's actually on the Yahoo homepage. And it kind of sets the tone for what I want to talk to you about today. And we've been talking lately about controlling the narrative and the flow of information and how important that is to furthering the agenda of the globalists. And I think all of us are quite aware and up to speed on what that means and how it's been manifesting itself in recent days. But this article I found to be curious. And again, it comes from Yahoo News, and I'd like to read a portion to you, starting with the headline where it says, coronavirus conspiracy theories make Fauci the villain because somebody has to be. The article says in the middle of it, while the disinformation campaign that has emerged around the coronavirus includes many classic conspiracy theory tropes, the recent focus on Fauci, as well as other health authorities like the World Health Organization, also seems to reflect a particularly Trumpian phenomenon in which the president and his allies within the administration are seen by supporters as separate from the rest of the federal government, and any official or institution that contradicts President Trump's message is viewed as the enemy. The article goes on to say, I think the Trump world is unique in the sense that they are entirely engaged in a narrative battle devoid of fact and reality and nothing else. It's the only thing they've been successful at, according to Rogers, Chief Technology Officer of the Global Disinformation Index, which works to track and disrupt the spread of misinformation online. Rogers also teaches a course on disinformation and narrative warfare at the New York University Center for Global Affairs, said that Fauci's loyalty to science and data is at odds with loyalty to the narrative that the administration and its supporters often want to spin. Now, this would be rather sickening if it wasn't so silly, because the fact is, every model that Fauci has presented to us regarding the statistics that are going to become reality in this coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic have broken down. Not one of them has been true. Not one single thing that any of those in the World Health Organization or Fauci or Dr. Birx or the CDC, all of the models presented from governors of states have all been wrong. We've been hearing about how many people are going to die here in the United States and around the world, and everything has fallen well short. I mean, it's not even remotely close to the numbers that have been predicted. Let me give you California as an example. Supposedly, there were some 26 million of us here in California that were going to be infected, and anywhere from 100 to 240,000 people were going to die here in California. And as of today, tragic as they are, the number is actually a little bit over 1,700 people have died here in California. So it's kind of interesting that these people would point the finger, someone especially who has committed themselves to controlling or identifying misinformation, would promote someone and protect someone who is given so much misinformation to continue the sense of panic and create the fear that is driving us today. Case in point, many of you have probably seen the two California doctors who have been saying, you know what, the models are all wrong, the information is wrong, the science isn't there. All these decisions on the shutdown have been based on emotion and fear, not science and fact. Well, you know what happened today? These two doctors' viral video got pulled down off of YouTube because they disagreed with the World Health Organization's findings. YouTube CEO Sundar Pichai said, quote, anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. Removing videos is an important part of our policy, end quote. Obviously, the effort is to control the narrative, to make sure that we're hearing what this particular group and others want us to hear, making sure that we're being fed the information that will keep the sense of panic at a peak and at a maximum here in these coming days. Now, we've also heard things about, because some of the states are reopening, that the infection rate has soared through the roof, which is again, something that is so ridiculous because over and over and over, we've been told that this virus presents no symptoms in the case of many. We're also told it has a 14-day, up to a 14-day incubation period. So how can they say there's more people infected because of opening beaches or businesses in various states around the country, that all of a sudden the numbers have shot up when they haven't even reached the full incubation period? And again, this is all about controlling the narrative. This is all about getting out the information they want to control and that they want us to hear in order to control the things that are happening that are important to expanding and advancing the global cause. Now, there were some interesting things, as I said, that developed today, and I want to talk to you about a couple of them and start off with something that actually was good news in the midst of everything I was preparing for today. And the story comes from Fox News, where it says Trump is going to invoke the Defense Production Act to keep meat processing plants open amid fears of supply shortage. And President Trump plans to sign an executive order to ensure meat processing plants stay open during the coronavirus pandemic. The order will invoke the Defense Production Act and will deem the facilities as part of the country's critical infrastructure as concerns mount that the U.S. food supply chain will be disrupted because of the contagion. The federal government will also supply additional personal protective gear to plant employees. I don't know if you've ever seen a packing plant or footage packing plant, but because these people are handling things people are going to eat later, they're already well protected. They're already suited up. They're already wearing masks. They're already wearing gloves. They're already wearing gowns. They're already prepared to protect the meat from anything that they may have. And the whole argument has been, because in a packing line, they work in close proximity to each other, they can't practice social distancing. Well, as I said, they're already wearing what's necessary to keep them from getting any type of virus or cold they may have on the meat that they're handling, and therefore from one another as well. But this is seemingly a mystery to those who are trying to control the narrative. And it's interesting also, we see on Fox News on April 27th that the story, the headline, food supply chain is breaking. Tyson Foods chairman says as processing plants continue to close. Bloomberg ran a story that said, America on cusp of meat shortage with food chain breaking down. They wrote in their article, the coronavirus pandemic is pushing the food supply to its limits. Plant shutdowns are leaving Americans dangerously close to meat shortages at grocery stores. Meanwhile, farmers are facing the likely culling of millions of animals and mass burial graves soon could be dug across the heartland, where many of our farms and ranches are that raise the products that we all enjoy in the grocery stores. Now, see, this is what's so bizarre. This is why I find statements like we read in the opening article so telling about the control efforts of those in places of power, especially those in the media. They're accusing those who may have and are supporters of Trump of being basically mindless trolls who simply follow whatever after Trump says and support him no matter how ridiculous his statements may be. And we tend to have a practice of spreading misinformation. And yet here we have something, and again, this just falls under the category of the absolutely ridiculous. I want you to think this thing through. They're shutting down the meatpacking plants, and I've got some information both on a media level as well as a personal level, something that was shared with me just this morning from somebody I know personally who is related to someone who is actually caught up in the middle of this. But think about this. The grocery stores are open because they are essential. We need to be able to get to the store and buy our food products. Now, I would have to say this whole paper product shortage has been kind of bizarre, and it continues today. If you get past 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning in any given store, you're not going to find any paper products. You're not going to find paper towels, Kleenex, or toilet paper. And toilet paper has been even the bigger mystery as far as shortage. But I'll tell you one thing, it's nothing like a food shortage, a meat shortage, where people begin to go hungry, where things get completely out of control and mothers and fathers begin to worry about feeding their children. But think this through. They're closing and have closed many meatpacking plants around the Midwest and in the heart of our country, where the stockyards are around the Chicago area and other places like that. And these are the people that supply the grocery store. So how is it that a grocery store is an essential part of keeping America alive and moving forward, where the places that supply the grocery store are not essential? It just doesn't make any sense. And that tells you that there is a motivation behind it that is beyond what is being presented by those in places of power, men like Bill Gates and others, who are trying to force us into a place where we receive a vaccine and take the digital identity and currency and all the other things he's trying to sell and those alongside of him. And it's just an incredible thing for us to consider in these days that something so ridiculous would be acted upon by so many in places of power. You can open a grocery store, but you have to close the places that supply the grocery store. Well, thankfully, the president took action today, and there's a YouTube video that I would encourage you to go out and watch. And I'm not sure who produced it, but I've received it from dozens of you out there over the past 24 hours. And it's a Texas rancher. His name is Shad Sullivan, and he's making a plea to America to stand up and call for the government to do exactly what the president did today. And obviously, he's implying it on a more local level. And he said today, or he said whenever he recorded, they are euthanizing millions of chickens. And now they're going to be ordered to do the same with cattle by government mandate. Now, as I said, I found some information out this morning, and curiously, when I was packaging all this together to talk to you about it today, someone I know personally, someone who goes to our church, someone who is part of our security team, someone I know very, very well and trust absolutely and completely when he shares information with me, he said he received a text from his sister just this morning, and it said this: they shut down a couple of processing plants in South Dakota. I'm not sure what the number is around the United States, but if we don't find individuals to buy our hogs, there's no place to take them. All the lockers are full, so where do you go with them? The plant we take our hogs to process about 8,000 pigs a day, and if they shut it down, nobody has any place to go, and that's just one plant. If we don't have any place to go with them, we will have to kill them because we can't afford to keep a bunch of pigs and feed them because the cost is outrageous. And if we're not getting anything for the pigs, we can't buy any more for our stock. And all of these things are done in the name of saving lives. They're shutting down meat processing plants, or they have, or are continuing to attempt to. And yet, as I said a moment ago, the president thankfully stepped in and issued an executive order. He's getting ready to keep them open, so the supply line that feeds our grocery stores will make sure there's meat on the shelf for us to purchase. But again, thinking about how all these efforts are coming together now to make sure that we're living in fear. Oh, we can't get toilet paper. Let's go buy everything we can. Oh, we can't get paper towels. Let's go buy them all up. Now here you go with a potential and major media outlets and news sources reporting Tyson Foods CEO even coming out and saying, hey, they've cut the supply chain. We're going to be in trouble, and we're going to be in trouble really fast. And there's going to be a problem keeping meat on the shelves in the grocery stores. Well, what's that going to do to the man on the street, the person who has access and the resources and funds to go out and grab an abundance of meat and put it in their freezer and leave many maybe who are struggling financially or aren't able to get out to the store without anything to put in their freezer. So again, some of these things are just beyond belief. They're absolutely stunning that are happening in our country. So again, all of these things are being done under the banner of saving lives. And we've talked about it in the past, the fact that this whole thing has been pitched to us, this shutdown, because we need to slow the spread of COVID-19. Now, I've reported from the researchers and the tests that have been done by Stanford University and some of the epidemiologists there and virologists and immunologists who have been researching this thing and doing studies in various parts of the country, including the 27 states that are home to baseball teams here in our country. And they've all come up with the same thing, that the infection rate is far higher, but the fatality rate remains the same. And obviously that's not a number you can fudge. but they're all telling us the same thing. There are a lot more people than we imagine that have antibodies. So if you drive up the infection rate, that drives down the percentage of the fatality rate. And yet there are those today who are trying to make sure that we continue in panic mode, continue in fear, so they can tell us what to do, tell us when we can go out, when we can't. And, this article that was talking about trying to shift the blame over to Dr. Fauci because of the shutdown and all the economic problems that it's creating. He just came out a couple of days ago and said, we need every state to issue an even stricter lockdown. We need to be more stringent about keeping people inside and telling them not to go out. When every single person that has come out of late, outside of these who are part of this advance the narrative group, are saying, you know what, this whole shutdown thing was a mistake. And we have places like Sweden who did what should have been done here in our own country. And that is because the fatality rate is highest in people over 65. They told people over 65 to shelter in place. And because they hadn't seen any cases in elementary children, they kept the elementary schools open. And because there were a moderate number of cases amongst high school and colleges, they told the high school and colleges to close and go to online classes. So in other words, they took the data and reacted according to the data. What we've done in our country is we took emotion, we took fear, we took motivation to push our country, which is one of the two countries in the world that is fighting against this globalist mentality. We have a nationalist president. Israel has a nationalist prime minister who wants to take care of their own people and not be a part, at least in the sense of advancing this globalism that many want to see happen in our world today. And instead of acting on science and fact, we've acted on fear and emotion in many cases. And thankfully, we have a president who has somebody who has his ear, who is giving him solid information saying, think this through. You can't shut down the meatpacking plants because they supply the grocery stores that we're keeping open. We're going to drive further fear and needless shortages in our country. Now, let me give you another example. And as I said, all of this has been done under the name or the banner of saving lives. We keep hearing that constantly. We've tried to slow the spread. All they're doing, and by their own admission, they're trying to keep the hospitals at a level where they can handle the influx of those who are COVID-19 positive, who are in the more serious category of being symptomatic or severely symptomatic. Now, we've seen reports all over the place of what the facts actually are. Here we've got these two Navy hospital ships on either coast that have had barely any patients within them. I think one had 179 and the other had 59, and they've both gone their way and moved away from New York and California because there's no point in having these there. We heard about the Seattle Army Field Hospital that was set up with 250 beds. They never had one patient in 9 days. So they broke the thing down and went away. We're hearing about hospitals who are potentially going to have to close because they haven't been able to do any elective surgeries to keep the funds coming in to the hospital. Now, why would anyone want this to happen? Why would anyone want the hospitals to shut down? Well, let's see. Has there been any group in our country who have been trying to take over medicine and nationalize it? Have there been any efforts in the recent past to take control of our hospital and medical system in order to make it just a government entity? And this is a very possible scenario that's playing out, and part of the cause why this whole thing has happened, and elective surgeries that are now finally being reinstituted. And all these things we've seen from the CDC, from Dr. Birx, saying publicly on national television that we are labeling any potential COVID-19 death as a COVID-19 death. Doctors have been saying, where in the world are all the stroke and heart attack patients? How come we don't see any of those at the hospital now? That's because people are in fear. They don't want to go to the hospital. They don't want to get COVID-19. All these other things that we see are all playing a part into, we have to do this for the sake of everyone's health. We have to make sure that we slow the spread of COVID-19 around the country. Now, here's something else I mentioned that I want to bring back to your mind. I've thrown out this word egalitarian in recent days, and I think we need to understand it fully what it means. It's a good and positive word. It's part of even our Declaration of Independence, and basically what it says is that all men are created equal. everybody has equal rights. Everybody should have equal access to opportunity, and we agree with all of those things. However, egalitarianism in our day is feeding into what's going to happen during the tribulation period, and what the demand of egalitarianism today is being packaged under the banner of socialism, which we see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others, Bernie Sanders, pushing this forward in the narrative to advance this globalist cause. And basically what their egalitarianism is, or their version of it is, nobody has the right to have anything more than anybody else. Not only do we all have equal rights, we all need to have equal bank accounts. We all need to have equal housing. We all need to have equal everything. Nobody has a right to have anything more than anybody else. And that's why we're doing things like shutting down states like California, where the impact has been minimal. And many say we already have, at least to a degree, herd immunity, because most people believe, and the facts scientifically seem to support, that this whole coronavirus thing hit here in California likely back in the fall of last year. And that's why so many have tested with the antibodies for the coronavirus here in California. We saw this report that came out of Stanford with Santa Clara County, the stunning numbers of the 3,000 people tested that already had the advanced antibodies, meaning that they were now immune to it. But again, we're not acting on information. Everybody if one state has to shut down, if New York, which has 50% of the fatalities in our country, if New York has to shut down, Montana has to shut down. Virginia has to shut down. Everybody has to shut down, because nobody gets to stay open just because they don't have as many cases there. So this is all part of this mentality. This is all part of advancing the narrative of the globalists. And we're seeing this on a larger and larger scale being made known or revealed, if you will, through this COVID-19. Now, because all of this is done under the banner of protecting lives, let me give you some real facts and show you and highlight for you that this indeed is a plan, a concerted effort to advance their cause. Now, everybody wants to save lives. I'm all for saving lives. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have taken steps until we figured it out. But now that we figured it out, we need to reverse steps that we're overstepping the rightful boundaries that would protect us. I want you to think about something here for a moment. 88,000 people die of alcohol-related causes in the United States every single year. Now get this, one person dies of an alcohol-related traffic accident in the United States every 48 minutes. Somebody dies from an alcohol-related traffic accident in the United States every 48 minutes. That's 11,000 people a year. 88,000 people a year, more than have died from the coronavirus thus far in the United States. 88,000 people a year die of alcohol-related events. 11,000 on top of that die in alcohol-related traffic accidents. Tobacco, get this. Tobacco kills 480,000 people in the United States of America every single year. 480,000 people. That's almost 500,000 people die from tobacco every single year. Drugs kill 44,000 people a year. And the most heinous crime of humanity that continues to this day, abortion, kills in our country 1,095,000 human beings every single year. 1,095,000 people are killed in our country in the place that ought to be the safest for a human child, and that is the womb of their mother. In 2018, 80,000 people died of the flu. Our flu season has just ended, and this year the number is somewhere around 30,000. But a lot of that is because so many of these flu deaths are now being attributed to COVID-19. And again, manipulating the facts, the data, in order to control the numbers and continue the panic. Now, we saw this manifested very, very clearly in just last week's report from New York, where Andrew Cuomo tested 3,000 New Yorkers, and he found that 13.9% of New Yorkers, according to this study, have antibodies. And then he quotes a fatality rate that is based on the previous fatality rate, or the infection rate numbers. He said, and ignored basically his own findings, his own study, so he could keep the numbers high. Listen, everybody that is actually reporting factual information is reporting that the COVID-19 fatality rate is 0.7%. 0.7% is the fatality rate of COVID-19. Now, why no one is mainstream is putting this out to the world, I believe, is obvious, because they are trying to advance their cause and their narrative. And listen, I have in the time past always been very hesitant to talk about conspiracy theories, because a lot of them are just that. There's a lot of things that float around, because of what I do and how often I study prophecy. I'm always running across some story about, a week from Thursday, we're going to get hit by an asteroid. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. And those things don't pan out. But this is very obvious. This is very clear that there is an agenda that is being advanced, and it is feeding into what's going to take place during the tribulation, where one man and a few of his cronies take over the world and control it completely and without opposition. And listen, we are being forced into that right now. And think about what we just read with the CEO of YouTube saying, if anybody disagrees or presents information on YouTube that is in conflict with what the World Organization has said, which, by the way, remember, every single model they have presented has been dead wrong, way off. The numbers aren't even remotely close to what they said was going to happen around the world. It is far more infectious than the flu, but it is far less fatal than the flu. That's what the initial information was, and all of a sudden that got changed. It didn't fit the narrative. It didn't fit what those in places of power want to do and want to force upon us. But here we have, again, just incredible things happening in our world. And yes, they do point to the fact that Jesus is coming soon. It's an incredible time for us to be alive. And listen, I'm not living in fear. And I'm just like the rest of you. I'm careful. I'm cautious. I have my alcohol wipes I keep in my pocket. And I take precautions whenever I go and clean my hands before I get in my car. I don't want to get this thing, because it is real. It is out there. But let's not stick our head in the sand and say it's not being exploited. There are too many valid, legitimate people of scholarship, and then just plain old people on the street who at ground zero are being impacted by this. As this farmer said, he's got a whole herd that's ready for market. It's ready to go to the stockyard. It's ready to go, and this may not be a topic that we like to hear about, but he's got cattle ready to go to the slaughterhouse. And instead of having them turned into product that makes it to the grocery store shelf, they're going to have to dig a mass grave and kill all these cattle had the president not stepped in. So let's be wise and discerning out there. This is an amazing time that we're living in. Bizarre things are happening, to be sure, but this is exactly what we should expect in these last days. Things are perilous, as Paul prophesied in 2 Timothy chapter 3 to Timothy. He talked about people being lovers of themselves. And boy, I tell you, you see that on social media. And one of the things I think that's really sad about the day and age that we live in is that people used to be able to disagree, and they used to be able to do so decently and respectfully. But we seem to have lost that, even as this man who's in charge of this disinformation or misinformation flow job that he has, or this group that he runs, saying things that are just so negative about someone because of their political position and because they happen to follow the president of the United States, who is hated by all those on the liberal left. So let's not put our head in the sand. And, if you happen to see this YouTube video by Shad Sullivan, he's urging you to call your local administrative people, whoever they may be. Call your city council, call your governors, call your council people, whoever it is. And, I have to say, I think we as the church need to stand up. It's time for us to recognize that there's an agenda that's being advanced. Now, I'm not calling us to civil disobedience, so to speak, but I also say it may come to that. It may come to the place where we have to say, hey, wait a minute, listen, government, you don't have any money. That's our money. And we, the people, are the ones in charge of this country, not a select few, especially those who are opposed to anything that is deemed conservative or anything that is the advancement of patriotism in our country or nationalistic mentality and anti-globalism. We need to stand up. We need to support one another. We need to support certainly our farmers and those who are making sure that product is getting to the market so we can make our purchases and have food for our own families. And even this today is being fought again. So I just wanted to, and pardon me if I'm a little bit passionate today, but this thing just really got to me. I just couldn't believe the illogical aspect of this. Let's shut down the meatpacking plants, but keep the grocery store open. I mean, that's just ridiculous. It's common sense says that's not going to work and create a food supply. And in the article I opened up with, the guy talked about these ridiculous rumors about there being a food shortage. You got the CEO of Tyson Foods. And we've all heard of Tyson Chicken, of course, and chicken nuggets. And how many parents have kids that eat chicken nuggets? Imagine your house with no chicken nuggets. I'm sure there'd be some angry kids looking for one of their favorite staples. But, we have to realize that there is something behind this. There's something bigger than just the COVID-19. There's an agenda that's being advanced, and there's no question or doubt about it. So let's be wise. Let's be discerning. Let's be careful and smart in keeping ourselves healthy. Let's protect the elderly and the vulnerable. Let's take all those steps, but let's not let those in places of power destroy our country because they have an agenda that's contrary to ours. So basic common sense, I think, for us all. Well, that's all I have for today, and appreciate all of you and your encouraging words that pop up on the screen there, and thank you for all of your reminders of all that's going on and the information that I get sent from so many of you, and looking forward to what's going to happen in the coming days. I talked with so many people, so many different people who are, just Christians as well as prophecy people that are studying the things going on, and everybody is of the same mind. Things are wrapping up. It's almost over. And it just seems that, as we've seen the birth of Israel, as they celebrate their 72nd birthday today, and recognizing that Jesus said very clearly, the generation that sees the fig tree budding again will see the whole of the Olivet Discourse come to pass, or that group of people alive at that time during their lifespan. Everything will happen that was written in the Olivet Discourse, including, the tribulation period and all of that. And we're not going to go through the tribulation, thank the Lord for that. But we are seeing all these things, all these precursors, all these birth pangs that are happening today. And so, listen, I hope you're ready. I hope that you have made sure that your eternal destiny is secure by belief in Jesus Christ. And it doesn't matter what you are ethnically, whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, what you are economically, whether you're an employee or an employer. As Jesus told the teacher of Israel, Nicodemus, in John 3, he said, hey, you must be born again. And that's how we're going to get to heaven. That's how we're going to bypass the tribulation. That's how we have our sin forgiven. That's how we have the Holy Spirit placed within us, is by being born again. If you haven't been, you need to be. God has made an offer that is for a limited time, so to speak, because at death it ends. You can't get saved after death. You can only be saved during this life. And whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. And I pray that you have had the wisdom to make the discerning decision, the fact-based decision, that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He died for our sins, rose to conquer death, and is alive forevermore, and he's coming again. He said he'd gone to prepare a place for us. And if he's doing that, he said, I'm coming again to receive you unto myself, that where you are, where I am, you may be also. So to that I say, come quickly, Lord Jesus. We're ready for you, but until then, help us to occupy, be about the Father's business till you come. Well, God bless you all. I hope this has been insightful, and as challenging as it is, I hope it's been an encouragement to you as well. So God bless you, and we'll see you soon.